Welcome to the Find Your Feminine Fire podcast. I'm your host, renowned sex and relationship coach Amanda Testa. And if you are looking to reclaim your sexual desire, take sex from a to-do to something you look forward to, and enjoy deeply connected relationships without adding more to your already full plate, then you are in the right place. Listen in to discover how to fan the flames of your feminine fire, fall in love with your sensual self again, and experience intimacy like never before, all in a way that feels really good to your system. Make yourself comfortable and enjoy the episode. Hello, and welcome to the Find Your Feminine Fire podcast. What if I told you that the key to unlocking true success in your relationship starts with understanding real chemistry, and not just the kind you might think of in science or in a lab? So if you're listening to this and you are a high achiever, like I know many of you are, or someone navigating the complex world of love and connection, this episode is for you. Because let's face it, no matter how many boxes you've checked, that doesn't mean much without fulfilling relationships. And I know many of you listening often struggle to balance that success with your relationship. So tune in, because today I'm going to be talking to a brilliant friend of mine who understands both sides of the equation, Dr. Jessica Gold. She is an MIT-trained PhD chemist and neuroscientist who transitioned from studying molecules to mastering the art of human connection. As the founder of Bliss Science, co-founder of the AI company Digital Wisdom, and a TEDx speaker, she spent the past decade blending cutting-edge science with timeless spiritual teachings to transform the way we approach love, relationships, and self-awareness. And today, she's here to share more of a story and also some actionable wisdom to help you create deeper, more conscious connections in your own life. I am Amanda Testa. I'm your host, and I'm so thrilled to have you here. Dr. Jessica, thank you for being here today.
My pleasure. Great to see you again, Amanda.
Yeah, so I'm curious, because one of the things that I think is so fascinating about you and all the things that you weave together, because you've really been in each of these worlds. You've navigated science and spirituality and relationships and the way they can feel very disconnected. I'm curious, what's the lessons that each has taught you about connection? And how do they weave together in your life's work?
Yeah, such a good question. Well, being a chemist, I don't know if it taught me very much about connection, except on the molecular level. I don't know if any of you remember OChem, but there's a lot of electron pushing. And you're always trying to figure out where are the electrons going to go to form a bond. But it was interesting because while there was some logic and obviously some laws of the universe and some rules that attraction had to follow at a molecular level, there was also a lot of mystery. Sometimes we weren't sure what kind of bond was going to be formed or where it was going to be formed. And so it was both very logical, but it was also an art form and a dance. And this is one of the things I loved about OChem. There was a lot of 3D visualization in our minds of like, how are these molecules going to fit together? And yeah, we had computer simulations of how molecules bonded as well, but a lot of it was like building actual stick and ball models so that we could see the 3D structure and then like holding them up and being like, how are these two going to fit together? And so I learned that while science had a lot of logic to it, there were a lot of things that we couldn't predict. And I learned to really lean into the unknown. And I think that's something that people don't think of when they think of science. So that part was really beautiful. Unfortunately, to be in lab and succeed as a scientist, we had to cut ourselves off from the neck down. Really, the only thing that was respected was functioning like a robot, where you work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week in lab. You're the most hardcore. You're exactly the same every day. You show zero emotion because that's weak. And you're relentlessly applying your brain to be the smartest, learn the most. And the relationships with people in the lab, nobody really cared about that, except broing out over beers occasionally. And I knew that in order to be respected as a chemist or a scientist, I really had to erase any sense of being a woman. My advisor actually once made a joke about one of my female lab mates being on her period. And he wasn't straight, he was gay, but it was that toxic of an environment. So I learned really unhealthy things about human connection and really beautiful things about molecular bonding. Then when I went and lived in a spiritual community, which was a huge leap. I mean, for my scientist brain, anything spiritual was just a laughing stock. I mean, we made fun of spiritual stuff all the time in lab, especially astrology. But there was no understanding of the subconscious or the importance of implicit systems. I mean, implicit systems are the things that allow us in our brain to make meaning of life. And they allow us to do things like transition from walking on a flat surface to walking upstairs without having to relearn it every day over and over again. And these are very powerful things that are operating below our level of awareness. But I was really just taught that what you're aware of is everything and the most important. But that is a very harmful way to try to navigate your life. So in retrospect, what I learned in spiritual community was that we were engaging these implicit systems. We were engaging the right brain. We were engaging the subconscious to help us suffer less and be more powerful in the world. And there was this deep sense of, well, instead of trying to logic and figure everything out with the discursive mind, there was this sense of wonder and mystery. And that was really at the forefront. And so when I came to relate in the spiritual system, well, let me back up there. So in the spiritual community, what I really learned was this sense of experimentation on a level of who I was being as a person. So it was like I was experimenting on my subjective reality, whereas as a scientist, I'd been experimenting objectively with my molecules. And this was a great key that unlocked so much power and pleasure and happiness in my life, because when I realized, oh, I've been operating in the world trying to be perceived as a man. In the spiritual community, I was given permission to explore like the whole range of expression from quote unquote more feminine to anywhere in between. And it was really like we were experimenting with relating, and I wasn't respected in spite of my feminine qualities. I was respected because of them. And there was this understanding that masculine and feminine are always together and they're never apart. And like in classical Tantra, Shakti is the creative power, is the potency of Shiva. And without Shakti and Shiva, which is awareness or illumination, without Shakti, Shiva is dead, is nothing. And so they always came together, and there wasn't one that was less respect worthy than the other. So I came away from the spiritual system understanding the biggest lesson was that I was worthy of respect as a human in all my ways of expressing myself, and I didn't have to put myself in a little box. And then coming to study relationships, well, what I learned from that is there is a scientific understanding of how we relate that's very different from the bullshit and lack of education that we get about relating. But the scientific understanding is missing the spiritual aspect. Anyway, that's a more complicated answer. That could take me like an hour to talk about, but I'll pause there for now.
Yeah, well, I think it's fascinating too, because I think many people out there that are successful, a lot of that is that drive to be the best, to work hard, to not be emotional, to be very goal-oriented, to be very driven, which can be construed as maybe, quote, masculine or traits, but it's really that kind of high-achieving mindset it makes it challenging to then shift into a emotional, relating, connecting realm, I often see. And I know you work a lot with high-achieving men and who are really like successful, but might be struggling too in relationships. And I'm curious, what might be a surprising thing that they reveal about their inner struggles to you when it comes to relationships?
Well, they really want to make the woman in their life happy. That is their deepest desire. And I think women don't realize that and how much it means to them. Now, they may have no idea how to do that or be going about it in ways that seem like that's not what they want. But that's really at the core of men. And it's very tender every time I see it.
I'm wondering, how do you feel like as women, because I know a lot of the people that listen to this podcast identify as women. And so please share this episode with your partner. But what are some things you think that they can do to support their man in this process?
So I don't know how this is going to land, but it is the transformation I went through in my life. So I was married and I was acting out of a lot of internalized patriarchy, let's call it, where I thought that in order to be respected, I had to be the same as him. I had to be in my head. I couldn't ever surrender or be vulnerable. I thought vulnerability was weak, and I didn't know how to communicate. I've had men tell me before, they'll say, but Jessica, if I'm not defending myself or giving advice, what other way of communicating is there? And I 100% get it, because that's exactly how I was raised. That's the environment I grew up in. There was just no modeling of healthy communication. And in my entire scientific career, from MIT through my PhD, through my postdoctoral fellowship at 3 different universities, I never had a single class in how to have healthy relationships. Nothing, 0. And of course, there was just dogma from the church, which was not helpful whatsoever. So my marriage didn't work out, and there were a lot of reasons for that. And it was only after I got divorced that I learned what is the number one thing that can help. And honestly, it's allowing him to make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that might mean taking off your badass boss woman hat and leaning into vulnerability. It might mean being in your body and allowing yourself to find pleasure, to delight in each other. That might mean noticing your communication style, because as women, we can be just as defensive, just as advice-y giving, and we can tend to be all up in the head, and you can just be in this heady communication. But if you can relax into the pleasure of your moment-to-moment experience in your body and from the 5 senses, that is going to make things so much easier and better.
It is a game changer for sure. I'm wondering too, because one of the things that I've heard you speak to with this is being able to communicate in a non-defensive way, to be able to let someone express, to have a better skills around that. Maybe do you have any pointers that you could share around that?
Yeah. So a lot of the men I work with, almost all of them, they experience the woman in their life as critical and complainy. And I understand both people have contributed to this dynamic. I'm not here to blame anyone, but to look at the pattern between 2 people. I'm sure, and I do know, that women have been trying to tell men something over and over for years and decades, and it never got heard. So just to say that I know that's at play too. But I think one of my teachers, Kendra Kunov, she says, complaints are lazy desires. Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot. Complaints are lazy desires.
And Esther Perel says that we're never going to get more of what we want by complaining about what we don't have.
Yes.
And so one of the shifts, there's a few shifts you can make. The first is create a culture of appreciation in your relationship. So notice what he is doing that you love and appreciate him for it. And then when you notice yourself wanting to complain, and I'm a champion complainer, that was the entire way. Criticizing and complaining was the entire MO that I learned. So I know I've had to change this. But it's very empowering in myself to change it, because I don't like being parked in victim energy.
Yeah.
I like being the conscious creator of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So when you notice yourself having the same complaints, what is the actual desire underneath? So if you're it's been another week and you haven't taken out the trash again, why aren't you doing this? The desire underneath might be I want to feel like you're proactive in this relationship with me. I want to feel like I matter to you, that we're a team. So when you open the conversation with your desire, then it creates space for him to move towards you and makes it more likely that you'll get what you want.
Yes. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I think is important to name, because it can be, like you said, it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. Sometimes you might need help. But when you find yourself in wanting to be able to relax into the receiving mode, which can feel really hard for a lot of people. I think some people are just born givers versus receivers. And it sometimes can be hard to settle, relax, surrender, and really let yourself receive. And I'm curious how that shows up or what you notice about that.
Well, for me, after I'd lived in spiritual communities for many years, I mean, I got lucky because I got to do that. And I undertook the practice of getting out of my wound up brainiac state. And look, I just said, okay, I don't really agree with this way of being or thinking, but something isn't working. I was having a lot of health problems. I'm just going to try on, for the sake of this workshop, I'm going to try on this other way of being. And then I had a sexual awakening and I was like, holy shit, why did nobody tell me about this? What the fuck? Pardon my French, but I was livid because I had no clue how much pleasure and fun it was possible to have in a female body. And I could not believe this had been hidden from me. Like, I'd received zero education about pleasure. And so once I did that and I started like letting myself play, and I realized, no, I'm actually being more respected because of this. I'm not being looked down on, because I had been relentlessly harassed my entire life. And I had closed myself off and been really angry and upset. But that just led to me having this victim energy that led to more harassment, in my opinion. And once I stepped into my power as a woman and my pleasure in the body, it's been a no-brainer ever since. Like, hell no, I don't want to stay tight and wound up. It's no fun. I don't, like, 15 years of my life went by and I was moving through life in that state. It caused me to drink too much, chronic fatigue, anxiety through the roof, to have shallow and unfulfilling relationships. And I knew the rest of my life could go by in the blink of an eye the same way, and I'd be married to my to-do list. And I was like, why would I do that when I could have so much fun instead? Yeah, so it's been like a no-brainer ever since my awakening.
I'm curious too, what the difference you notice in your relationship now, like how your relationships are different now versus before. Because I talked about this in a few weeks ago, my husband, because you've worked with us too. Like we were talking about how for most people out there, I think they're just scratching the surface of pleasure and connection. And there is nothing like that deep, blissful. It's so divine, which is why people seek it. And I think too that there is often a lot of grief in my clients when they do have that experience, when they awaken to it, because they're like, I've spent so much of my life not knowing this. Why did no one ever teach me? That can be a really common thing. But I'm curious for you, just in your own relationships, how you see the difference playing out.
Oh, it's like night and day. I mean, I was trying to control everything and needing to be right and needing to be in charge. And I felt like I could never get the love that I wanted. I felt lonely. I felt frustrated. I was in anguish a lot of the time. I tended to have avoidant partners. It was just 15 years of total anguish. And my relationships now, I mean, my partner, I mean, he is an incredible man. And I demanded that. I mean, he is really on the same team with me. We have monthly relationship check-ins. He is so caring and considerate, just all the time. And he also has incredible boundaries. And he will not let me do something out of integrity. He invites me to walk my talk every day. And we create this culture of flirtation, of delight, of appreciation. Honestly, I found a really good one, and it's so easy. It's delightful. I mean, we're just constantly creating that little, that frisson, I call it, because I used to live in France, that little shiver up your spine of delight.
Oh, wait, please say that again, because I love that so much.
Yes, we're creating that frisson. Yes, frisson. I know when the R's are good, they're good. I have bad French nowadays.
I also feel that, I know that feeling, and it's so good. And I like how you say creating the culture of it, because it is creating that culture, and it makes it so much more fun just to be in that environment. It's so fulfilling. Even when I'm just going up the stairs and we pass each other and there's just this meet with each other, and it just is so enlivening and fun, right? Because even when we're busy, it only takes a second or two to reignite it so we can keep it going.
Yes, exactly. I'll be running to my next client call and I'll see him at the stove and I'll just go over and tickle his back or give him a hug and then run off, right? There's always time for that. And I mean, I know that a lot of women struggle with pleasure and sex. It helps that I really like sex and he's very skilled and we can talk about it. I don't ever have to worry about hurting his feelings. Like he's not intimidated by me. He's really done his work to cultivate a deep sense of self-worth and he knows his own values too. So that helps a lot. I don't have to be afraid that he's going to collapse or get defensive if I bring something up.
Hey, it's Amanda. If you are enjoying the show and felt a connection to what we've discussed, and you're ready to take the next step in reigniting your passion and enhancing your relationships, I have something special for you. Visit www.amandatesta.com/thegoods, where you can subscribe to my email. And if you want, you can sign up for a free personalized sensuality discovery session with me. In this one-on-one, heart-to-heart session, we'll explore your unique desires, uncover any challenges, and set a path for you to experience the vibrant, fulfilling love life you deserve. Don't let another day pass feeling unfulfilled or disconnection. Take action now, and let's start this beautiful journey together to fire up your feminine fire. Join me at amandatesta.com/thegoods. I'm excited to stay connected. Now back to the show.
So something I really wish women knew about men is really how deeply ingrained anti-relational behavior is in them. I mean, every man that I've worked with has said, but Jessica, isn't vulnerability unattractive? I don't know how evolutionary psychology came to dominate our ideas about dating and relationships, but it's not good science. And yet that is the conventional wisdom that I hear over and over again. Like, women only like men who are rich or have six packs, and no data that I cite saying that actually we're looking for kindness and emotional availability. Nothing seems to sway men. They really feel bad about themselves, like they're never going to be good enough for you. For women, and yeah, they think that they have to defend, that they can't ever self-reveal or it's shameful, and that emotions are weak and they shouldn't be feeling them. The only thing they should be feeling is happy. And they are very afraid if you are feeling anything that's not happy. And because women have been made fun of so much, and there's such a lack of information about like our hormones and our cycles, and it's just really denigrated, I think men just see us as this mysterious other. There's a lot of othering and pedestalizing. And so the more that you can relate to him with your own vulnerability, the more that you can invite him into relationality, I think the easier it is for them to not feel so much shame and embarrassment over learning relational skills.
I think that's important. And when you invite in that shame-free connection, because there is too just so much science around opening your heart and like that heart energy and how it does affect the people around you. So those out there who might be thinking that sounds like bullshit, it's not, it's proven. And there's a whole like branch of study around it called heart math and more. And I think this is part of what the sacred sexuality work does, is it helps you open your own heart so that you can soften to others. Yeah. And I think that is the inspiring thing for your partner when you can create that. I'm curious your thoughts around that.
Yeah, I mean, it is not a mystery what works in human relating. The science is very well established, and it's been in the past 30 years. We understand attachment. We understand the nervous system. We understand implicit systems in the brain. We know exactly what is needed for bonding to be successful. And I say that on every level as a chemist. And there is some parallels between molecular bonding. There are some parallels between molecular bonding and interpersonal bonding. I want to write a book on it. But what I want to say is that we are still at a time of shifting the paradigm, because for thousands of years, the way that humans have related has been through domination and through power over. And I mean, as we know very well from research, love was not a part of marriage until the late 1700s. And you were not expected. It was even considered uncouth. It was like kind of, ew, you're in love with your wife? Like, ew, who does that? And so it was really just, you saw your partner as someone to have your kids and someone to like have an economic arrangement with. There was no sense of, how do I create a healthy relationship? But now we actually know exactly what you need to do in order to make that happen over time. It's just that wisdom hasn't filtered through. But yes, it's all based in research. It's not hand wavy. You can get hand wavy, weird spiritual stuff if you want, which I think often recapitulates patriarchy just in spiritual clothing. So be careful. But the science is there.
What do we need to do? Maybe just one or two things. For those listening, they're like, okay, great. It's proven what? What is it?
Yeah. So you want to learn to regulate your nervous system so that it stays in the green zone in the window of tolerance so that you create that foundation of safety with your partner. And I talk about this in my TEDx talk, exactly what I did. I was working with a man, Sam, who had been in a sexless marriage for 20 years. And exactly how I walked him through changing that. He started showing up as a different man. And then she started showing up in lingerie at the top of their stairs when he would come home from lunch. So
I think it's so cute, right? Because it's not always the lingerie, but just like that shift in yourself, how it changes others.
Right. You don't have to like lingerie. It's fine. Yeah. But the shift, yeah, even if one of you starts shifting and starts behaving relationally, that puts your nervous system in a state that invites the other person. So our brains are scanning for safety, I think 5 times a second. And so if you start showing up as safe to their subconscious mind, then that's going to create an opening. So the first thing is the safety. And there's a bunch of different ways to do that, but it involves self-awareness and emotional regulation and second consciousness, like not just acting out of your like reflexive defenses or adaptations, but noticing those and instead choosing to respond. And then the second thing is, of course, the spark. You need to, because if you have all safety but no spark, then it's like a wet washcloth and the attraction dies. So you two together need to decide, like, does the connection between the two of us matter? And Esther Perel says somewhere on the long list of things that are important to your children, couples that have an erotic connection, it needs to be at the top of the list. And so you need to decide together, like, I'm not going to get lost in motherhood, or I'm not going to get lost in my business, but actually the health of the connection between us matters. So what are we going to do to cultivate that spark? And then I think the third thing is devotion. And this is maybe less scientific, but really considering, are we both devoted to a third thing in our relationship, which is love? Maybe it's awakening together, because that has been a path, like helping each other see our blind spots and grow. But what are you devoted to? Like, why are you going to spend your life together? It doesn't, the answer used to be for children or because I have to. Well, it's not that anymore. Those are 3 like high 1,000-foot view steps of how.
Yes, I think that's huge. I'm curious because I know for a lot of people out there, you can do so much on your own. And then that does often inspire change in your partner. So I really want to say that, because sometimes people are like, yeah, that's all great, but what if you're not on the same growth path? You can inspire them. And I'm curious, because I think that is like, we've been taught that we need someone else to do that, but like we can actually be like the initiatrix of our love in the relationship and like that devotion. So I'm curious if you would maybe share about that, your thoughts on that.
Oh, 100%. I see it every day because I specialize in working with men in sexless marriage. And interestingly, I often get the opposite of the popular combination. I get the men who are wanting to do the work, but their woman isn't. And I have seen it over and over again. When he starts showing up differently, he creates that safety for her to stop being closed and defensive and refusing to go get help. And he starts owning his role, and he starts going under the fighting and speaking to her heart. He starts revealing and asking for what he wants instead of fighting more. It completely changes. It's a pattern interrupt, and it's startling. And then more often than not, it's like she's been waiting for this, like part of her. I was that woman. I was super closed and defensive and wound up, and I actually wanted to soften, but I was too embarrassed. Yes. So it is 100% possible if you change. And if you start to change and you notice that your partner isn't, then you may be dealing with a personality disorder or an illness of some kind. But then you'll get that data. You'll know that it's not just that they're unwilling, it's they're unable. And then that's a different conversation.
Yeah. And I'm curious for the men who might be listening, maybe what is one tip you would give for them? Like the number one thing you would want them to know they could do to make a difference, like a simple thing.
Take any pressure off of her. Yeah. Pressure is the enemy of passion. And really think in yourself. I know it's hard if you're already feeling sex starved, but I know that you have the strength and you can do it. It's a courageous act. But even just go up to her and say, I want to feel deeply connected with you. And this is not about sex. In fact, I am explicitly taking sex off the table for the next month, 2 months. I don't know how long you need. I want you to not have any worries that our interactions are trying to lead anywhere. I want to just connect together. I was working with a couple last night, and actually this happens a lot in my work too, where it's the man who has sexual shame. So often his wife has higher desire and he has a lot of shame around his sexuality, either because of like enmeshment trauma with his mother or just because he received messages from the culture that like men were unwanted and his sexuality was harmful. And so he was feeling shut down and really hesitant. But when I gave them a new context, I like took the pressure off of this specific interaction having to lead anywhere. And I just said, just be experimenters. Try something. And if it doesn't work, then try something else. And you know that she's not expecting you to do anything and perform in any particular way. And whatever happens, you'll learn, you'll get new data, and it'll be fun. And that's exactly what happened. And he said, just because the context was different, I felt no pressure. That allowed me to not have the same hangups. And I ended up going all the way and doing the thing that I'd been reluctant to do in my marriage for the past 10 years. So really just changing the context of how you interact is like a magic switch.
Beautiful. I love that so much. I think one of the things too that I just wanted to touch on, and I know we won't have time to go into it very deeply, but one of the things that I think is really interesting about your background and like combining all the facets and also technology in that. And you've also built a digital AI company called Digital Wisdom to bring that kind of relational experience, that relational intelligence to everyone. And I'm curious, how do you envision technology transforming the way we approach personal growth and relationships in the next decade?
Well, I have a vision of everyone having their own personal relationship coach in their pocket. And it takes the shame away. Like no one needs to know that you're learning this. You don't even have to talk to an actual human. So there's no judgment from the AI wisdom. And it can even just give you the accountability that you need, the knowledge that you need, and the inspiration that you need. And then in this way, it can be accessible to everyone, even who previously couldn't afford to get help or thought they didn't have time. I mean, if instead of scrolling your Instagram, you're like watching the video from your relationship coach in your pocket while you're waiting for the bus or whatever, it's a game changer. And so I'm very excited about this. Our company, we are creating AI tools to help coaches, educators, wisdom holders to expand their reach, bring their wisdom to more people, because we really believe technology should be used for good, to spread healing, to spread positive knowledge and relational knowledge.
I think that's powerful. I think because it's just the way of the future, what's going to happen. And so why not use it for good, right? It's like just let that be a force of good.
Yeah.
Be and use it for, there is the way that you can use it to support yourself and your relationships. I love that vision. I love the vision of people actually doing some kind of personal growth, some learning when they have free time versus like watching dumb things on the internet. Now, there are some funny people on the internet. I get it, right? But yes, you feel better about yourself, and it just changes, because often that scrolling can be a way of regulating yourself, but not when you're consuming content that's like not helpful.
Absolutely. And what if then you get past the stalemate in your relationship, you come home and home is actually a soft place to land, or you come out of your home office and you feel like you want to connect with each other because you know how, you have the skills. The state of relationships are just abysmal. And if you're having trouble, I want you to know it's normal. Like there's no shame in it. It's really the status quo because people have not been given the tools. And one of my favorite tools, one of my favorite things to use is this question from another mentor of mine, Terry Real, who's a very famous couples therapist. He says, "What can I give you to help you give me more of what I want?" Yeah. So instead of complaining, criticizing, getting into the old arguments, you could just be like, "Babe, what can I give you? Like, that would help you give me more of what I'm looking for in our relationship. Like, what is it that you need from me?"
Yeah. I love Terry Real.
Yeah.
So good. Well, I'm curious. I feel like I could keep talking to you forever because I could. But I'm wondering if there are any maybe last words or questions that I didn't ask that you really wish that I would have asked that you want to share.
Well, one thing I want to share that I think women might not realize about men is that they've really been told that success is what it's all about in life. And so they pursue success and then they realize, oh, wait, this is actually hollow without love. I've had very wealthy men tell me, without my girlfriend, I'm just a dude alone in a big house. What am I doing? And men who are married but neglected their marriage on the path to success, they tell me, I became successful, but it was actually scary as shit. And that's a quote, because my marriage suffered and I didn't know what to do about it. And I realized none of that success mattered. And so my mission in life is to really help men and women understand each other. And I think that women maybe don't realize how deeply men have been programmed around succeed, don't show any vulnerability, don't show any emotions, don't ask for what you want, but just secretly try to get it through making covert contracts, a lot of nice guy stuff.
Yeah.
And I know that it's hard to empathize and come into understanding when there's so much water under the bridge, or someone's been cold or so unhelpful or so shut down for so long. And I know that there is hope when you create that safety for someone to open up. Sometimes it's really above our pay grade to do it on our own. And that's why there is help. There's so much great help today, and there's no longer any shame about asking for help.
Yes. I want you to share where everyone connect with you in just a second, but I have one more question. I'm curious, this just came to me, but like, what truth about love have you learned that surprised you the most?
Good question. Well, I think what continues to surprise me is how diverse humans are. Studying love is a very humbling undertaking, and there's a lot of dogma out there. Religion will tell you one thing, science will tell you one thing, spiritual polarity work will tell you another thing. Monogamy, received wisdom about monogamy says one thing, or women say one thing, men say one thing. But the truth is that the way humans love and relate is unpredictable and very diverse and doesn't come down to any sort of textbook or dogmatic structure.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I would love if you would just share with those listening that want to learn more about you and where to find you, if you would share just a little bit about where they can connect with you and find more.
You can find out about me on my website, bliss-science.com. I run a Facebook group called Passionate Relationships for Powerful Men, but it is for men and women. So I put a lot of material around the exact steps to take to have better sex in your relationship, or if you're single and dating, to meet the woman of your dreams, or how to practice Tantra. A lot of very specific teachings in that Facebook group, and it's a really sweet community. So come over and find me there. I also write weekly articles on Medium. So that's where you can find me.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much again for being here. And for those listening, thank you. I have one other question that's popped in. And I just need to ask you, for those who are listening that were like, man, I would love it if my man would like work with Dr. Jessica and get some support. Like, how might that be something they could approach that conversation that doesn't feel criticizing or complaining?
Right. Yes. So focus on the vision. This is actually something I teach men all the time. Create a vision for your relationship and invite your partner into it. And I'll tell you a secret, women. So this is something that men really deeply wrestle with. And I think we as women will never understand the depth of it. But they are programmed to want sex all the time, and it's overwhelming to them, and they feel bad about it. But they want to feel close to you. They want to be able to express their love through having great sex with you. And I think very few men are asking themselves questions about like, why is that? Or able to have a separation around, oh, there's that desire again. Oh, that's my DNA wanting me to produce. Like, we're not there yet. Anyway, so if you say to him, do you want to feel connected and have like a hot, juicy, loving relationship? Do you want me to desire you? Do you want to feel desired in this relationship and cultivate that over the rest of our lives together and have a ton of fun and passion? Like if you bring that vision, I have a feeling he'll say, yes, what do I need to do? Tell me, I'll do anything.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah. Or do you want to feel celebrated as a man and unshamed and not embarrassed about your desires and know exactly how to turn me on? And I don't have to teach you this.
Yes, that's a huge point, right? That you don't have to teach anyone. You don't want to teach your partner everything. So I love it. Thank you so much. And I will also make sure to put all the information of where you can connect with Dr. Jessica in the show notes. Thank you again for being here.
My pleasure, Amanda.
Yes, and thank you all for listening. We will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Find Your Feminine Fire podcast. If you loved this episode, please go ahead and forward it right now to someone you know would love it. And if you've not had a chance yet to leave us a rave review on Apple Podcasts, please make sure to rate and review if you enjoyed it, as well as make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you want to stay connected, make sure to go to amandatesta.com/thegoods to download your free sensuality activation and stay connected. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.